Whether you have limited space or you really just like finding things that are small, easy to photograph, easy to store, easy to ship, then this is a series that is for you because this is the first breakout video in my series, 10 vintage small items that are selling for a big profit on eBay. And these are things that I have researched that either have a huge uptick in their sales over the last year or so, or items that have been steadily selling for a really great profit. And today we're diving into cufflinks, which is really exciting for me because that is how I broke into selling jewelry in general. I started with men's accessories and slowly branched out from there. And two of my top sales ever on eBay have been cufflinks. I'm going to link the playlist here for the 10 vintage categories that have small items that you can pick up to sell for a great profit on eBay. And I've also created a free downloadable PDF for you to keep track of not only the things that I'm sharing, but in those comment sections, lots of people share other small items that are selling for a great profit as well. This is just scratching the surface. And I will also not only show you the 10 things in the video, but I'll also show you exactly how I did the research so that if you find this video in a year, a week, a month, 2 years, you'll be able to go back into eBay and recreate this research, whether it's for cufflinks or gloves or toys or whatever it is, so that you can see what's selling well, and what maybe has a huge uptick in sales so that you know what to look for when you're out thrifting, garage selling, or at estate sales. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Margaret. I've been selling on eBay, Etsy, and other platforms for well over 10 years and making videos all about it so that I can help you become a successful reseller. So whether you're just starting out, whether you're seasoned, or whether you're just trying to make extra money for retirement, whatever your reason for wanting to resell, you're definitely in the right place. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel or liked the video, I would really appreciate you doing that. This lets YouTube know that you're finding value in my content. Let's get started talking about the 10 cufflinks you should be looking for when you're out at garage sales, estate sales, and thrift stores. First up are Dante Incolay cufflinks. And this is what they look like. Incolay is like a resin that's made to look like a cameo. So these are vintage Dante Incolay cufflinks that feature horses. These sold for $85. Here are a pair of Dante Incolay Artemis cufflinks that sold for $99.99. And when I look at recently sold on eBay, I see that there are quite a few that have sold for well over $100 and others that have sold for right around $100. So here's Hermes and Aphrodite. These sold for $165. This is Artemis, another pair of Artemis cufflinks that sold for $105.99. When I scroll down, I see that there are a few boxes as well. So if you're out looking for cufflinks and you happen to stumble across one of the boxes, then definitely pick that up because those are also selling for a pretty good profit as well. Here again are some horses, $85. And when I scroll down, you can see what they look like. There's a darker colored background, whether blue or black, and then a cream or white relief image of Greek gods or horses, or this one, again, it looks like a chariot perhaps. Yeah, charioteer for $50 there. So you get the idea. These are Dante Incolay cufflinks. The next cufflink to look for are vintage Wedgwood cufflinks. Vintage Wedgwood cufflinks are going to look similar to the Incolay cufflinks, but the main difference with Wedgwood versus the Incolay is that Wedgwood is a porcelain bisque, which means it's a porcelain that has not been glazed. So it's going to be more porous, but it's definitely not a plastic. So these are blue Jasperware Wedgwood cufflinks, and these sold for $99. I wanted to share this one. These were labeled as Wedgwood. However, they are not technically Wedgwood, and I'm wondering if it was just that they were the Wedgwood colors. I'm not sure how that works as far as putting that in the title, but either way, these sold for $99.97. So who's complaining? The buyer is happy, the seller is happy. Fantastic, right? So let's take a look over here. Wedgwood cufflinks. These are completed and sold listings. I have these sorted by ended recently. Even at ended recently, we've got about $50, $65. These were $25. But when you're looking at Wedgwood, let me come sort these by highest first, so you can see the top end of cufflinks. And as I said, my two of my top sales have been right around $400, and they've both been cufflinks. So it's completely doable. Here is a pair of Wedgwood cufflinks for $520 that sold, another pair for $110, and these sold for $99.99. A lot of times Wedgwood will have this blue background and then a white relief image, whether it's a Cameo or there are these that are like the crabs or Libra that are astrology, Greek gods, that type of situation. But Wedgwood also has like a different background as well. So sometimes they'll be black, there's a green, and I saw when I was doing the research before that there was also like a white background or a cream background with a black relief image. So here's another, it's like a Spanish galleon that sold for $60, another one with the ships, $85. So if you are seeing cufflinks that appear to look like a Cameo, then that's something to pick up, whether it's Wedgwood or the Dante ones or clearly the Swank ones. If it looks like a Cameo, it seems like those are ones that are going to be selling really well. Before I go on to the next cufflinks on the list, I want to show you exactly how I do this research. What you'll do is you're going to come to your seller hub, and the way to get there is you're going to select sell. That will bring you to the seller's hub, and then come over to more and select research. That will pull up this empty research products page. And here I'm going to type in vintage, let's do cufflinks since we're talking about cufflinks today, vintage cufflinks. Then what you'll notice is over here, you can sort this by the last 90 days, the last 3 years. Usually when I'm wanting to see what's selling right now, I'll do the last 90 days because eBay shows the last 90 days of sales. So I'll come over here, select the last 90 days, and I can see automatically that the average sold price is $48.61. The only thing I see here also is that this will also pull up lots. And if I don't want to see lots that have sold, I can come here and put minus lots. So it'll take that stuff out. Now my average sold price is $50.34. And I'm also noticing that some of these are maybe not vintage. I'm not 100% sure on those. But if you're not sure, then you can come over here and select used, because that will filter out anything that's like new cufflinks that people are posting as vintage. Then you get a better idea. So we're still right around $50, and you can start scrolling through to see what kinds of things you're noticing are selling over and over and over. Another thing you can do is these are sorted by ended recently. You can select this over here and it will sort it by highest first. Or sometimes if I'm like, I just want to see what's selling for $50 or more, you can come in here, select $50 and apply. And that will show you everything over $50 if you're really just wanting to see what's a big seller. Then I'm going to take this off real fast. When I did the research for the top 10 vintage categories that are selling well, I really wanted to find things that either were selling for a high profit over time and it was steady, or things that have recently seen an uptick in sales, because we want to stay with those trends of things that are selling now. Because as you know, I've been doing this for so long, and those of you who've been doing this for a while too, you know, there are things that are popular for a while, then they fade away, and then they're popular again, and then they fade away. So let's go over here, and now I'm going to search the last 3 years and see what is, oh, it took off my, I have to come back and select used. I forget sometimes to do lock selected filters. Now I have this, but I want to see those graphs, right? I need a visual. So show sales trends. So when I'm looking at the sales trends, it seems fairly steady between like $40 and $50 generally. And then when I come select this arrow here, now this is where I see a big uptick. So while the average sold price has been pretty steady, what I am seeing is that there is an uptick in the sales of cufflinks, which is what I like. So I can still handle a $50 sale if I'm seeing that, okay, they were selling about 200 or so, we're selling every, couple of weeks on eBay, and now there are more like 600 plus selling. So you can see that there's definitely an uptick in the sales of cufflinks. And that is how you can come in and do this research for anything that you are interested in selling or anything that you think might be seeing an upswing. So you can get those exact numbers to figure out like, ooh, should I really be paying attention to this? Or maybe this is something I should stop picking up because there's a downtrend on this. So this is where you'll find that information. The next type of cufflink that you want to look for, say you're at an estate sale or garage sale and there's a mountain of cufflinks in front of you and you've got to pick out just the ones you think are going to be the top sellers. This is another one to look for. Swank, but in particular, Swank Figural cufflinks. Swank is a very prolific cufflinks brand. So it's going to probably be one that you find a lot. Swank and Hickok. There's a few brands that make so many cufflinks. But what you want to look for, let's say you've got a bunch in front of you, you've got to try to figure out which ones to bring home with you. If they are figural, and what I mean by that is they have a shape to them and they are something specific, like these 4-leaf clovers sold for $275. If they're just like ovals and they're just kind of plain, then okay. So I almost added the uranium glass cufflinks to the list, but I didn't because even though they were selling well, there were only a few sales. So just as a bonus, look for the uranium glass cufflinks as well while you're out there. So like these have sold well, but they might start blending in. These are sterling silver. Okay, these are 10 karat gold. Okay, we're going to pick up gold and silver, right? We can all agree to that. But figural. So here we've got these carved faces. Then down here, we've got these figural fish, right? And these sold for $80. And there are a couple pairs of these golden retrievers that have sold for a high profit. So this pair of golden retriever figural cufflinks sold for $80. Here it is again from a different seller, sold for $75. And then here are some figural cufflinks with some etched sailboats, and these sold for $75. I also saw a number of cufflinks with watches in them, little clocks that have been selling, but I don't know why I'm pointing at my finger. Maybe I'm thinking about the old ring watches, remember? I didn't add those to the list either, but I did see a number of those had sold. See, here's another with the uranium glass that sold for $62, best offer taken. So if you see the uranium glass, definitely pick those up. As you're narrowing things down, definitely look for those figural Swank cufflinks. Another thing I almost added to the list, I don't think I did though, were these tuxedo sets. And I've sold tuxedo sets similar to this where it's got the cufflinks, it's got the button covers, and I've sold some for as much as $100. So definitely look for those as well. They didn't make the list because the prices were kind of like all over the place, but they can bring in a good profit. The next type of cufflink to look for that bring in a great profit are reverse painted cufflinks. What do I mean by that? I mean, you're going to find a cufflink that maybe has like a glass dome on it, and it is painted underneath, so it's showing up under through the glass dome. So here we've got these look like little basset hounds or some kind of hounds that sold for $537 for these reverse painted cufflinks. Here is a solo reverse painted cufflink of a little kitty cat, sold for $241. And then I see a lot of these with hounds and horses in like fox hunts. These sold for $148. Here is another pair of reverse painted that sold for $97. This has 2 pairs of cufflinks that are duck hunts, and one of the sets is a reverse painted duck hunt image for $85. There's some spider webs. This is super cool. These sold for $75. And some vintage golfers. These sold for $58. question that I get asked a lot is, how do I manage listing on so many different platforms? And I really think that this is something that can benefit you if you're trying to sell and really ramp up the amount of profit you're making. The platform I use is called List Perfectly. I do have a coupon code for this, and it's 30% off, and it's down in the description box below. And while this is not a sponsored video, it is a platform that I really stand behind and really believe in, because it has done so much for me, so much for my sales. And when I'm listing on List Perfectly, I can save things there, edit things there. There's an automatic delist if it sells on the platforms. So you can list on whichever platforms you like using. So for a while there, I was listing on eBay, Etsy, Poshmark, Mercari, and Facebook Marketplace. There are more platforms that you can be listing on as well. Being able to have your items on so many different platforms really gives you the opportunity to make more money. And using List Perfectly is a fantastic way to get your items in front of all of those buyers. So if you are considering using List Perfectly, I would appreciate it if you used my link, because it lets List Perfectly know that I recommended you. Another reason I love selling cufflinks is that a lot of times these go under the radar. When people are looking through the jewelry or they're trying to figure out what to sell, a lot of times they don't really take cufflinks into account as far as them being possibly fine jewelry. One of the actually both of the cufflinks sets that I sold for $400, one was solid gold and the other was gold with jade stones in them, and they both sold for $400. These are cufflinks. The next one's on our list, that is. The next cufflinks to look for are cufflinks that have either coins or coin motifs. Here we've got some definite big sellers. These are coins that are 18 karat gold, that are 22 karat gold, that are definitely gold, and they're selling for well into the thousands of dollars. Of course, again, we've already agreed we're going to pick up gold and silver and anything that's like Chanel or Gucci or things like that. So let's scroll down and see, are they all just gold coins or other coins as well? They are other coins as well. But as you can see right off the bat, some of these 600, 500, 520 on these fancy coins. But here are a pair of Greek coins that sold for $197 with best offer taken. Here are another set of coin cufflinks that sold for $199 with best offer taken. And I could easily see these that look like kind of quarters that might have slid under the radar at a garage sale if they thought, oh, they're just some quarters on some cufflinks, whatever. So these sold for $169. Here are some other old coins that sold for $170. Another pair that sold for $164, and these over here for $149. I'm skipping over the Tiffany cufflinks because I think if you spot some Tiffany cufflinks, you're probably going to pick them up, right? And this pair of vintage vermeil cufflinks sold for $98. And what they mean by vermeil is it's silver, and then there's a gold coating on top. Next up on our cufflinks that are selling well on eBay are Toshikane cufflinks. These are another style of cufflinks that are going to jump out at you when you see them. As you can see, these Toshikane cufflinks, they are carved. A lot of times they will look like masks or faces. These are samurai. These sold for $112.46. On my product research in the last 90 days, the average sold price for Toshikane cufflinks were $110. Let's take a closer look at what you're going to look for. So here are some carved tigers that sold for $275. These look like little seahorses for $259. Here again, we've got these that look like masks. These sold for $250. Scrolling down, there are a few that are not three-dimensional carved, but they are, it almost looks like mosaic, right? So it's on a black background, and then it's got some kind of relief with either a bird, a mask, here's a geisha, and a pagoda in the background. Here again is another pair with the seahorse, and here are some pagoda, $110. There are our masks of our samurai, $112. So definitely keep an eye out for the Toshikane cufflinks, because they're ones that are going to jump out at you if you see them, especially mixed in with a bunch of other cufflinks. The next style of cufflinks to look for that are selling well on eBay are double-sided cufflinks. A lot of times with cufflinks, there is a disc or an image on one side, and then there's a bar that will flip up and down to hold it in the buttonhole. But double-sided cufflinks have it on both sides, and they're usually linked with a little chain or a bar. So here we've got these black ebony 18 karat ones that sell for almost $800 with best offer taken. Here are 10K rose gold that sold for $550. Now, of course, we've already agreed, right? We're going to pick up gold. So let's see what else. Let's scroll down. Here is a pair of double-sided silver and enamel that sold for $244 with best offer. I want to scroll down a little bit past the gold and silver because we are going to pick those up. Here's a pair. Those are sterling. These lapis double-sided cufflinks sold for $131. Here is another pair of lapis cufflinks that sold for $65. Here are a pair of really cool, almost Art Deco style that sold for $45. Here's a blue enamel double-sided cufflink that sold for $50. I don't know if it's just that they look a little bit fancier when they've got it on both sides, but if you see them at a garage sale or an estate sale, definitely take a second look at them because they could be some of these high-end cufflinks that are double-sided, or they could be some that just sell for a really great price. The next set of cufflinks that I want you to look for when you're out at thrift stores, garage sales, and estate sales are Montblanc cufflinks. Now, Montblanc is definitely a brand we look for when we're looking at fountain pens and other kinds of pens and pencils because they can sell for a huge, huge profit. But they also make cufflinks, which I think really could fly under the radar because people aren't looking at cufflinks and thinking Montblanc. But there are over 250 or so sales in the last 216 sales in the last 90 days of Montblanc cufflinks. Now, if the seller has them in the box, then yes, they're going to know they're Montblanc. But what to look for if they're not in the box so that you'll know you've got Montblanc cufflinks that you can sell for a good profit? Well, they are pretty clearly marked. As you can see on these cufflinks, Montblanc is written right along the edge. And then right here on the bar that flips to close it, you can see that Montblanc star. That is their emblem that you'll see when you're looking. This is how I look. When I go to estate sales and stuff, I'll look in the cup of pens. There's usually an office and there's all these pens. And so I'll go and look at the tips of the pens that are sticking up. And if I see this right here on the top of a pen, then I know I either have a Montblanc or I've got a faux Montblanc. So that is what you're going to look for, Montblanc, and then that little star symbol. Here are a pair of Montblanc cufflinks that sold for $358. The Meisterstruck it has this little textured pattern on them, and both of these sold for over $300. This is that star symbol that you're going to look for. These Montblanc star black inlay cufflinks sold for $313. There are quite a few. This has got the star, but it's in kind of a intaglio, like carved down. This sold for $290. I'm sure there's another word to describe that. Then there are these really cool green ones. These sold for $304. And these are the kind that I think would easily fly under the radar. These are Montblanc cufflinks that sold for $295. So definitely keep your eyes open for Montblanc cufflinks. These are another pair I'm going to point out because if you just looked at the front of them, you may not realize, yeah, they say Montblanc, but it's kind of, you can't really tell. But as soon as you see that bar, swivel bar with the star, like that, then you'll know, okay, Montblanc cufflinks, I'm looking at a couple $100 there. The next style of cufflinks to look for when you're at garage sales, estate sales, thrift stores are not cufflinks. There are not cufflinks that they're making nowadays that are fabric, kind of like a stretchy, elasticy material. Not those. We're looking for metal knot cufflinks like these. So it's got knots on both sides, not always, but a lot of times. These sold for $125. When I zoom out, so here are a pair of gold-plated Brooks Brothers that sold for $160. There are definitely Tiffany and Company and really high-end knot cufflinks that have sold for $100 or more. But here's a sterling silver pair for $209. This was a Taxco silver that sold for $179. There are quite a few here that are gold and silver. So this is something that could also slide under the radar if somebody doesn't realize they might have gold or silver with their cufflinks. There are quite a few cufflinks that are mixed in there that are not knots, but here's a pair of sterling silver love knots that sold for $75. And here's a pair of Links of London knot cufflinks that sold for $59. When I did the product research for knot cufflinks over the last 90 days, you can see even just within the last 90 days, a big uptick in the amount sold of vintage knot cufflinks. And when I look at the last 3 years of sales, there's a definite upswing in the last couple of years, maybe the last year or so, of vintage knot cufflinks. The next vintage cufflinks to look for that are selling well, I'm not even sure I would have known what these are, but they are Chevy cufflinks. They're not all the same, but these are Chevy Impala taillight cufflinks that sold for $199. And as you can see, unless they're right there on the card, I wouldn't have known they were Chevy Impala cufflinks. These sold for $199 with best offer, $180 on those. And then scrolling down, here are a couple different varieties that sold for right around $100 to $150. So if you see something that looks like a tail fin on a car and these little headlights, these sold for $100, these for right around $100. So there were multiples of these that look like car taillights. So if you see vintage taillight cufflinks, then definitely pick them up. There were so many other cufflinks I wanted to add to the list. There were Ralph Lauren. There were quite a few others that I had to narrow it down. And I wanted to pick ones that would really pop if you saw them and you wouldn't forget. So Ralph Lauren was number 11 if I was going to 11 on this one. But I really wanted to pick ones that I knew that if you saw them, you would remember. So those are the ones I picked. Those were the 10. If you think of if you think of any that I should have added to the list, definitely leave a comment and check those comments because I'm learning all the time from you guys and just as much, if not more than you're learning from me. So check the comments and leave a comment. Let me know what should have been added to the list. And if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button and the bell so you're notified when the other videos in this series come out, which I will link up here for you so that you don't miss anything else in the vintage small items that are selling well on eBay, and get that downloadable PDF so that you can keep track of all the things you're learning through these series. And I will see you on the next video. Thanks so much for hanging out. Bye.